Someone like to move? Angus and Roger. All in favour, raise your hands. Received them, thank you. And out of that is a recommendation there to council that the council adopts the Biodiversity Advisory Group terms of reference. And those terms of reference are attached. And they've actually been updated as well. There's a couple more hands there, but who's first? Angus.
I'll move that council adopts the updated Biodiversity Advisory Group terms of reference.
Diane?
We've also discussed since then about the point of.
I'm looking for a seconder.
I'm happy.
Carolyn, you seconding? Yeah, Carolyn seconded. Now it's open for discussion.
So just another minor adjustment there. Lynette and I were discussing it yesterday, and I think she's mentioned it to Philippa, but we need a little clause in there that the representatives of the groups, only one person from each group is delegated to speak at the meeting. In some cases, we have 3 from one group, and it needs to just be tidied up a little bit.
Okay, is there somewhere in the, okay, Carolyn?
I'm just looking at the advisory group membership. The only one we've got 3 from is ADC.
It's the new one that's coming in. Forest and Bird had been missed off the list, but it just needs tidying up that just from each of the groups, just one person has the speaking authority on the day of the meeting.
Oh, I can't see that on this. I can't see that we haven't got that new one obviously out.
It has, it came early this morning with the names on it. It has been updated. Lynette?
I would actually like to support that because with the government focusing on our environmental service in the future, I think our biodiversity group, it needs to become a bit more professional in its operation, and we need to attract some of the groups that are on there that are not coming. And yeah, and I think 3 people all speaking to a report, it's not good. It just hogs up the time. And I think really if one person spoke to their report at each meeting, it would be good. And also Bill Thomas is going to come on representing the zone committee.
Okay, it sounds a good idea because there's about, I've counted up, there's about 19 people on that committee. And if you have the 2s and 3s adding on in the same groups, it can get unworkable. So it really needs a main person and probably what you call it, a when they can't come there, someone else comes on and takes over for them.
A representative or a spokesperson.
Yeah.
Alternative, that's the word I'm looking for. Need an alternative. Hamish, I think you said the same thing. Yeah. So we need an alternate, one person there with an alternate. So is that in the, I don't think it is in there, so we need to put it in there somewhere. And could we be guided by Philippa perhaps on where it should go?
Yes, I can alter that. I'm sorry, I don't have the document in front of me right at the moment, but I did want to also note that the tracked change document did omit Forest and Bird initially. It omitted Mary Ralston and Barry Austin, so they've been added in as well. And I'll update that, and through the afternoon I'll update and send you a version to look at before the meeting's finished.
So the mover and the second are happy with that slight alteration? Yes. And Diane, you got your hand up?
I was expecting just to, well, Philippa can find the words, but it probably should go under the delegations, which is on page 21. I'll let Philippa work that out. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got the intent there to go in. Any further discussion? So I'll put the motion. All those in favour raise their hand. Oh, and passed. Thank you. No one against. The ADC Biodiversity Officer business case, which is on page 19.
I'll move, Mr Mayor, that a business case for biodiversity officers be prepared and considered in the Council's long-term plan 2021-2031, and the council notes the pending changes to legislation in the biodiversity area that may override the need to progress the business case. I move.
Okay, Carolyn, are you seconding?
Yeah.
Carolyn, second. Do you need to speak to that, Carolyn? No. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Or raise their hand. Raise their hands. Yep. Thank you. Passed. Against? Against, Stuart? Stuart was against. Do you want that recorded, Stuart? And Stuart records against. No one else against.
Why I voted against was government legislation are going to subservient that, and I think we're wasting office staff time doing it before we know exactly what implications are.
We won't be working on it for another probably 12 months or just shy of 12 months before it comes to the LTP. So, yeah, it may be overridden, but we'll see what happens when we get closer to the time. Next item of business, number 9, Environmental Services Committee, page whatever it is, 22.
22.
Diane, receive them. Diane, moved. Presume you moved, Diane.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I move that they be accepted.
A seconder. Lynette, seconded. I'll put the motion. We receive those minutes. Raise your hands. For, against, carried. Next item of business is number 10, Infrastructure Services Committee.
I'd move that the report be accepted.
John moved, seconded. Stuart seconded, and we're receiving the report. All those in favour raise their hand. Against, carried. All good. Road safety coordinating
Hang on.
activities.
There are 2 recommendations.
Yeah. The recommendation is the Road Safety Coordinating Committee terms of reference. Is that
No,
the first?
I'm going back to the bylaw and policy committee minutes. Recommendation to council. First one, the council receives the bylaw and policy.
John, I haven't got that far yet.
Sensitive expenditure.
I haven't got that far yet. I'm still on environmental services.
Oh, sorry.
Infrastructure services.
Sorry, I'm not even got that far yet. I'm in infrastructure services at the moment.
Right. Yep.
And there's a oh, now I've got to find it. I flicked through
Page 24.
24. Right. There we go. Page 24. There's a recommendation there to council that council adopts the Road Safety Coordinating Committee terms of reference. And Liz, moving the recommendation.
Yes, I'd like to move that we adopt those terms of reference, please.
A seconder. Lynette, open for discussion. Liz moved and Lynette seconded. And they are on page 26. Happy with those terms of reference? Doesn't need to be, Lynette.
I was going to say it doesn't. They don't need to be altered because that committee meeting is actually working very well.
Great. Okay. I'd move in a second. I'll put the motion that we adopt those terms of reference for road safety. Everyone of agreement, raise your hand. Against? There is none. Passed. Next one, the Ashburton Car Club road closures request, which is item 7.1. There's a recommendation to council, but since there was no need for it, so there's probably another recommendation there that the Ashburton Car Club road closures request be withdrawn. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Stuart and Lane. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye or raise your hand. All good. Passed. Now, 11, bylaw and policy.
I would move.
That we receive them. Seconder.
I'll second that.
Stuart, seconded. And I'll put the motion that we receive those minutes. All in favour, please say aye or raise your hand. Against, carried. And there's some recommendation to council out of that.
That I would move.
The number 5, the council receives the bylaw and policy review report. And Liz seconded. Any discussion? All in favour, raise your hand. Against, carried. Lane, you're in against? No, it's all right. The next one is item number 6. There's a recommendation there, sensitivity expenditure policy, and council adopts the sensitive expenditure policy, which has been revised.
I would move that the council adopts a revised sensitive expenditure policy with the next review
Seconder.
2025.
Councillor Cameron, seconded. Open for discussion. And the policy is there if you wanted to look at it. Any comments? I'm just going through it now. No markups for me in it. So I'm happy with it. Is anyone else all happy with it? If so, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against, carried. Next item is number 12. Audit and Risk Finance Committee. And move in a second that we receive those minutes. Lane and John Falloon. Put the motion, we received the minutes. Raise your hand if you're in favour. All there, carried. And in there is the Airport Authority recommendation there to council, that a council adopts the Ashburton Airport Authority Subcommittee Terms of Reference.
Also move.
Councillor Latham and Councillor Brahm, seconded. Any discussion? No, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, raise your hand. Carried. Then next up is the Experience Mid-Canterbury Draft Quarterly Report, and I'll move that we let that matter lay on the table. And Councillor McMillan seconded. No discussion. I'll put the motion. What's laying on the table? There is no discussion. I'll put the motion. All in favour, raise your hand. Against? Carried. So next up is the Ashburton Contracting Limited Draft Statement of Intent. And then we receive these. Councillor Brahm, Councillor Falloon. Any discussion? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour raise their hand. Against? Carried. Next is the recommendation to council the revised appointment and remuneration of directors of council organisations policy, with the next review scheduled for 2025. Have a mover for that? Councillor Brahm, Councillor Cameron, and those minutes. That policy is there somewhere. It's a few pages through, but there was just one alteration I had, and I'm just going on memory because it's going to take a bit to flick through the screen to find it. It was just around the RDR, and it mentions in there the directors don't get any remuneration. Well, the directors actually do get remuneration. So it just needs changing slightly. And how the directors deal with their remuneration is up to the individual organisations. So there was just one change there. Councillor Lovett.
Just going to say the councillor on that, they don't get it, do they? The remuneration.
No, the councillor that is, or the mayor that is on that as a director of the RDR doesn't get it. The fees are paid to the council and it goes into the council's coffers. Yeah, Councillor Rawlinson, you got your hand up. It's gone, all right. So the recommendation, where we get to, the move and a seconder for the direction. Do I get a move and a seconder for the adopt the revised policy of the remuneration? I think I did. Or?
Yeah, you did,
I did. Yeah. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, raise your hand. Carried. Next up is the drinking water. Hang on. I'm getting above myself here. The drinking water review. The council directs officers to prepare a cost to benefit analysis. Yeah, there we go. There's a recommendation there to council. The council approves a budget of 120,000 to install the remaining water meters on residential D properties, and this be funded from the Ashburton Water Reserve account. So I'd like to move that. Councillor Brahm, second it. Councillor Falloon. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against? Carried. Next recommendation is number 10 there. Recommendation to council. Council directs officers to prepare cost benefit analysis to investigate installing water meters district-wide through the LTP. And number 2, directs officers to continue to fund drinking water as per the status quo of a fixed charge for connected ordinary properties and a fixed plus volumetric charge for extraordinary properties for the Revenue and Financing Policy 2021. Someone like to move? Stuart?
I've got a question.
A question? Okay.
Yes. Number 2, I think is completely, my question is, why are you discriminating against those that have got meters and those that haven't got meters have got no charge? It's complete. It's like saying half the ratepayers have got to pay rates and the other half haven't because we haven't got them on the books. To me, it should be nobody pays until they're all got meters, which is going to be in the next financial year. So it's completely discriminatory. I can't understand why the council can't see that.
Are you signalling an amendment?
Okay. Yeah, as soon as I come through. Well, I'll move that the first part, number 1, be as read, and the second part directs officers to not.
Stuart, just to help out, shall we take them in 2 parts because they're not needed to be done in together. So we'll take number 1 first.
Yes.
So we'll move it from number 1. Paul,
Yeah, I'll move number 1. I'll move number 1.
And Diane, number 2, seconded that. Paul, you did have your hand up. Are you still there? Or you? No.
Can I just make a comment about possibly the amendment coming, that we actually have struck a rate for this, and it's actually a rate under the Rating Act for water meter charges. So it's going to be very difficult not to charge that rate that we've already struck. And I understand the issue that Councillor Wilson's raising about some people getting charged and some not. but the rate has actually been legally struck. So I think we're in difficulty in saying that we're not actually going to rate it in this case.
Thank you, Paul. Lynette?
Can I just ask a question? It seems to be the amount of water people were getting on the residential D. In the meantime, could we put the volume of water slightly up just to keep everybody happy?
You do whatever you like with a recommendation, I suppose, but I'm not sure you'll keep everybody happy.
I just think that is mainly the issue. If they've got a big family of 4 or 5 in their household, their water volumes aren't the same as what everybody else has a privilege to have around town. And they're only just oversized house sections. They're not producing market gardens or anything on there.
They are two, I could be wrong, 4,000 square metre sections, I think, which you could have a whatever you wanted on there. But would you want to drop the rate back for someone in a block of flats who uses very little water? To be fair.
Order.
Stuart?
We've got a motion on the books. Number one, we should be discussing the investigation of investigating installing water meters throughout the whole district. We should be discussing that before we get on to number 2.
You're correct. Point of order upheld. Roger, on item number 1.
No, I'm out of order, I think, so I'll withdraw that.
Right, Diane, item number 1.
Quite happy with number 1, but I thought we'd been through this, and that other motion we've just passed on the page above about giving the staff the funding to install the remaining water meters on residential D was part of getting fairity as far as the people are concerned who are paying a surplus, and there are others who are not paying. And I thought that all of this was tied in together to prevent that and to create fairness.
The recommendation we're dealing with, number 1, is to prepare a cost-benefit analysis to investigate installing water meters district-wide. So it's nothing to do with residential D. That's coming up next, or could be. So yeah. Any further discussion on item number 1? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your right hand or left hand. A hand. Passed. Now, item number 2. It reads, Council directs officers to continue to fund water as per the status quo of a fixed charge for connection ordinary properties and a fixed plus volumetric charge for extraordinary properties for the revenue and financing policy. Who was first? Lane.
Thank you, Neil. Page 41, the recommendation we just put through to council was basically part what Councillor Rawson just said as well, that number 2 is part of that one. Because we couldn't change it like Paul
We're just going to have to take you off for a second and wait for the internet to unplug itself or do something, and we'll bring you on now again. See how you go. Start again. No. We may have to sign language or something there. We'll come back to you in a minute. We'll just give things a few seconds to settle down. We'll go to Stuart. Stuart, you got a question?
Yes. Paul states that we have to continue to charge. There's no reason why we can't charge 1 cent per cubic metre for extra volume of water.
And Paul may help me, but that will be set in the fees and charges, is it, Paul? The
rate for this extra water and the allowances are set under the Rating Act, so it's in our rates. So we can't adjust at this stage either the rate in the dollar that you're charging or the allowances for the water. That's actually set in the rates. So my view is you're stuck with that for this year. You can't amend that at all.
Okay, Lane, we might try you now. You're on mute. Can I unmute? There you go. We're having trouble hearing you from Tynwald Lane. We'll have to surely you can listen to us, and hopefully you'll contribute some other way. Stuart, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I just seem to get, I understand Paul's point of view, but he seems to put a continual roadblock. Every time I bring this up, it's the same old roadblock. Let's bring it up later. Let's bring it up later. And that's all I get time after time after time. I cannot understand why you charge some and you don't charge others.
The previous item and in the budget approved 120,000 to put the remaining water meters on. We'll sort that out for residential D, hopefully. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question for my own clarification. Everybody is allowed, town and residential D are allowed the same basic quantity of water before the volumetric charge is incurred. Is that correct?
I'm certain that is correct. Who is there a staff member then tell us that is correct or not?
No, it's not right.
Neil McCann, perhaps?
No.
Hamish? Neil, here we are. Neil.
Yes, and sorry, if you can repeat the question about the different charging of the water of different properties.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. A quick question. Everybody in the urban is allowed X amount of water, as is everybody in residential D or wherever, and then beyond that there's a volumetric charge. Is that correct for the urban, for the residential D?
Everyone else in urban just pays a fixed charge. These particular residential D ones pay a fixed charge plus a volumetric charge on top of a fixed charge. But
and how does that compare? How does that compare with the urban use, not the usage but the allowance?
If you're referring to the allowance, which is the 1,000 litres per day, the residential D are granted, that was worked out on a figure that Andy presented in some report of what an average consumption of a house or person is. And I know that Councillor Wilson has questioned that and challenged that, and that hopefully we'll address in the report that comes through with the benefit cost analysis.
Can I ask another question, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
So just to confirm, are you saying that 1,000 litres per day is allowed in residential D, and is that allowed in urban on Walnut Avenue, 1,000 litres per day?
No, there's no quantity because we don't have them metered, so they just pay a fixed charge, and we have no idea of how much they use.
Sure. Okay.
Liz.
Thank you. I was just going to say, if Councillor Brown wants to use the chat to send any questions through to me, I can ask on his behalf.
Okay. And then another question that came through, we think Councillor Brown might be touching his microphone on his tablet. So if you, Lane, if you went to unmute and then don't touch the device and see how you go. No go at all. Send your questions through to Liz or via chat, and she can ask them if you've got some. Stuart?
Yes, in answer to Carolyn's question, we're allowed on residential D 1,000 litres per day per household. The average use per household per person in this district is between 600 and 700 litres per person. You go through and divide the amount of water we use by the people that are there. So the average household in this district with 2.5 people is about 1,700 or 1,800 litres per day, including wastage. So it's discriminatory, plain discriminatory. But for some reason, the council turns a blind eye to it.
We are the council, and now's the opportunity to change it if you wish, so that item number 2, council directs officers 2, and I'm stopping there if you have another recommendation. and we'll test the meeting.
Well, according to Paul, we can't change it until the next year, till we do a rates and policy or whatever it was. We can't change it according to him. I would like to change it, but he vows and declares we can't. Can we or can't we change it now?
Paul?
We're just looking at that as we speak. You can't change, you still have to charge the rate. But we're just looking at the revenue and financing policy to see whether that actually quantifies the water allowance that you get. And my very quick reading of it just now is it doesn't. So we could investigate further to see whether in next year's rate we could change the volume of water if that's what you require. The revenue and financing policy is clear that there is a fixed charge for these people on water meters, but it, from my quick reading, doesn't actually say what the water allowance is. But I wouldn't like to give you a firm view of that just yet, but we could certainly look into that and probably get back to you as soon as possible on that.
So the volumetric chart, the volumetric volume of water used on a residential D could be adjusted from 1,000 to something that is more realistic to something else, if it is more realistic. So should we ask for a report to the infrastructure committee to progress this? This is Diane.
I was going to suggest, could we put number 3 in there and move that staff investigate how we can raise the daily level of 1,000 litres on the metered residential D customers to 1,700 litres a day. Are we able to put a third motion in there to get this and get the wheels in progress? Because as Stuart said, we've talked about it and we've gone round in circles, but we've never actually taken a positive action to enable it to happen.
Well, that's like asking for a report, but I might take this. You may want to take the 1,700 litres out. How you got 1,700 litres, we don't know. So let the report decide what the litres should be.
Okay, that's a figure that I think Councillor Wilson had mentioned before, but in earlier discussions last year, that's where I got it from.
Yeah, Carolyn, your question there.
I was actually going to say the same. Remove the 1,700 and just leave the point 2 on the recommendations and ask for a report on the fund the drinking water as per the status quo so that everybody's aligned.
Okay, Stuart, there's your question, or you might want to move number 2, and we could then get to number 3.
Yes, I'll move number 2 then, as it's written.
Second it, Diane. Any further discussion? Stuart, anyone else want to discuss it before we get to write a reply? If not, there's no one to talk. I'm in favour. All those in favour, raise your hand. Lane, we can. Yep, unanimous. And now there's a number 3. Stuart?
Well, could I move that we direct council officers to investigate the fairness, or not, that's not the words either. Investigate a realistic amount of water before charging to residential D. And why I say a realistic, I know a council officer keeps quoting 200 litres per person, which is central Auckland. We should go by what the rest of this district uses on average, the rest of the town, not some little town, little city flat somewhere. We want a realistic estimate, the same as everybody else. That's all we want, to be fair to everybody. I'll move that
we've got the
council officers to look into a realistic way of amount of water that before charging comes in.
And that would go to the infrastructure committee, the next infrastructure meeting, if it's possible to have it there. Yeah, and second it?
I'll second it.
Oh. Diane? Carolyn, you got your hand up? Diane seconded. Carolyn, you got your hand up?
I was just going to support that by seconding it, but it doesn't matter.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hamish, you're quite clear on the direction there?
Yeah, yes, we are. Yeah, we understand, and we will prepare that report around the quantity of water before residential D has their volumetric charging.
Yeah, thank you. Roger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hamish has probably answered the question. I've just felt that the word realistic it's hard to quantify, and perhaps we need to say something like it's in fairness and comparable to urban residents. But Hamish has got the picture, so that was all I wanted to say.
Good. So I'll put number 3. Any further discussion? Need to write a reply, Stuart?
No.
I'll put the item number 3. All those in favour raise their hand. Against? Carried. Thank you. So that is that one. Moving on to item number 14. There's a recommendation here for the Ning King Brothers Chinese Market Garden Settlement funding request. Recommendation there. Someone like to move? Councillor Cameron. Moved. Seconded. John Falloon. Any discussion? Oh, Roger.
Can we be sure, Mr. Mayor, that the approval of an additional $40,000 is sufficient for the complete restoration of that settlement, or are we going to be asked for some more later on?
Hamish, have you?
Mr. Mayor, my recollection is that will be sufficient to complete the restoration works as per the recommendation of Heritage New Zealand. It's true that there may be some maintenance costs on an ongoing basis, as with a number of things, but this would certainly complete the restoration as recommended by the experts.
Thank you. Diane?
I'd just like to be devil's advocate, because the number 2 is that our funding is subject to the project getting Heritage New Zealand listing and receiving their contribution. What happens if they don't put in their contribution?
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor, we understand that money is readily available, and this shouldn't be too much of a problem.
Right, thank you.
Angus, I should have gone to you first because it lines up who's in order here, and I missed you. Sorry, Angus, you were in front of Diane.
I'm okay now because it makes it clear that there is other money coming in, and that it's subject to the other money coming in before we spend our own. I think that's a sizable amount that will probably do the job. Would you agree, Councillor Brown?
He's nodding one way or the other. Yeah, at least he is. Yep, great. So the motion there, just also, you know that Dan McLaughlin is sitting in the background waiting for us as well. So welcome, Dan, but we don't see you there, but we know you're listening at this stage. So I'll put that motion, the recommendation to council, the Ning King Brothers Chinese Market Settlement Funding Request. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against? Carried. Next item is the approval to use the Access Trust Special Fund. So I'd like to move. Liz, John seconded. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. Everyone in favour, raise their hand. Against? Carried. The Environment Canterbury Draft Plan. Oh, sorry, Lynette.
Just going to ask, with the situation at the moment, will that kind of be delayed for a while? And I know they were looking for a coordinator as well with the program. All this is going towards. What's going to happen there is, can we save a bit of money there for a wee while?
Lynette, you've gone on. Yes,
so So through you, Mr. Mayor, we will, with this approval, we obviously won't start anyone in that role until it's appropriate to do so with the lockdown and all the rest of it. So the appointment will just be delayed until it's sensible to have someone on the ground.
Okay, so that's been moved and passed. Next item is the submission to Environment Canterbury draft plan. Angus?
Okay, I'll move.
Angus moved. Seconder? Lynette? Seconded. Open for discussion. Liz?
When was the submission due in? Was it due? I couldn't remember, sorry.
Tony?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, the submission was due about 10 days ago, but we did receive an extension until today.
Okay, thank you.
Are they going to, Tony, are they going to have hearings on the submissions or not now, or by Zoom or whatever? Have you heard?
The last that I heard is that they were still considering what their options were in and around that space. So I'll keep you posted.
Okay, thanks. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion that we approve the submission to Environment Canterbury for the draft annual plan 2021. All in favour, raise your hand. Against? Carried. So the next one is consultation for our annual plan, and there's a recommendation there, and Angus, you may like to take us through it. Angus.
Mr. Mayor, I move that this recommendation lay on the table until the completion of item 14 in our agenda, rate increases for the 2020-21 annual plan and the other discussion on the annual plan document.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor McMillan? And the item will lay on the table if it's passed to go put the motion. Oh, is there any discussion first? No discussion. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Raising your hands, you were, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I would strongly suggest that we pick that motion up from the table after we've had our annual plan discussion later this afternoon.
Yep. And Angus or Hamish, I might get you to remind me that we have it laying on the table when we get to the appropriate time later. Thank you. Our next item of business will be the Methven Community Board meeting. And Dan, if you wanted to come on, and those flicking through these pages on the computer.
Page 58.
There we go, got there. Thanks, Liz. And we'll just note that the Methven Community Board meetings have been temporarily suspended while we're in level 4 lockdown. So hence we've got Dan here today who can speak on matters relevant to the board and anything he wants to talk about relevant to Methven that the board would discuss that we could do because of the lockdown. But there is a motion there. Well, first of all, we'll receive the minutes of the Methven Community Board held on the 2nd of March. So I'd like to move that. Councillor Latham, Councillor McMillan, we'll receive the minutes. All in favour, raise your hand. Against? Carried. There's nothing you want to talk to those minutes about, Dan? Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody, and hope everyone's keeping well on this sort of tough times, and good to see your smiley faces there. Not really, just that recommendation. That was something we came up with in January, and we tried to get the budget early February, but we sort of missed the cut-off date. Apparently that's my fault. I'll take that on the chin, part of it. And we sort of tried to get in there, and of course, as times change, come through to April, and it's there. And the main reason behind that is the Methven Community Board over the last 3 years has put money into improving the walkways around Methven, and was to help speed up that process and increase the walkways, which at this time is being very well utilised by people exercising and keeping smiles on their face. So it's become very busy, and so that's what it was about. Obviously, times have changed, and obviously the next bit is about the rates. Your next bit, so you'll obviously.
Cool. Any questions for Dan? If not, there's a recommendation there from the community board that they request the increase of the board's discretionary fund from 10,000 to 25,000 in the 2021 year. Do I have a mover for that, Diane, or your question? Diane?
Just a question, does that come out of economic development, or where does that funding come from?
Is that a Paul or Hamish? I think they're separately rated for it. But
Yes, it's a separate money. It's not out of the economic development budget. It will be an increase to that rate.
Thank you.
and Methven, I believe, have a targeted rate for it.
Yes, they do. It is, however, counted as rates.
Yeah. Lynette, you've threw your hand up. Yeah.
No, that was my question.
Okay, we've got to move in a second. Liz?
I'll move. Has someone moved it, or I can move that?
I think we did. Roger moved and you seconded, I understand. I think that's how it went.
That was just receiving the minutes.
Oh, sorry, it was too. Yep. Okay, Liz moved.
I'll move it. Thank you.
And Roger seconded. Angus?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor, if I may, to the chairman of the community board. I don't know whether it's proper or not, but in the light of recent developments across New Zealand, does he still believe that the community board as a whole would support this in our new environment?
I just answer that through the chair. Obviously, things are going to get tough in the next couple of years, and obviously, your next item on the agenda, looking at rates and the rate increase and where you're at's got an impact on that. We're still going to look at the future. We're not all dying. We're all still going to be here in a couple of years, and this district is going to be hopefully in good shape in a couple of years. And the community does need these assets, and you can delay them, but you can find balance there somewhere between hardship and moving forward. I think the community, in large, certainly the amount of people walking around that appreciate it, probably have no idea how it got there and where the money comes from, and the small group of volunteers that are doing it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Liz? Are you good? Any further debate? Lynette?
Just going to ask, this discretionary fund, is the whole total amount of money being spent on the walkways, or you're leaving some in reserve for other situations that may arise?
Dan, do you have an answer?
So in the past, our discretionary fund has been 10,000, and we've put last couple of years 3,000 each year and 5,000 this year into the walkway. So it will be increase on that, but we still will have some for other community projects which we've been supporting over the last few years. So definitely it won't all be going to the walkway.
And I see Lane has disappeared. Have we lost connection with him altogether? Perhaps we have.
He's just sent me a message to say he'll leave and try again. So
okay.
He's obviously coming back in.
Okay, great. Yep. So I'll put the recommendation that the Methven Community Board requests that Council increases the Board's discretionary fund from 10 to 25,000 in the 2021 year. Hamish, before I put the motion.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I just wonder whether you want to leave this on the table until the following item, and so you actually weigh up the merits of this matter in the context of the overall discussion around rates that is to follow. You may not wish to, but I just thought I'd mention that prior to you putting the motion.
I'm thinking that we could put the motion. We're not talking a huge amount of money. It's not going to make a lot of difference, but open to other councillors before put the motion. Angus?
The my question was to actually ask the people that represent the Methven Township community if they actually wanted the rate, and the chairman of that community board gave the answer. So we presume that that sits comfortably with the people of Methven. It's actually their, I see it as their recommendation to us to allow them to do what they want to do. And they're the ones that are pushing this, not us. It's on their shoulders, not our shoulders.
Okay, I think the will is to push forward with the recommendation as is, but I'm just going to go to Lane first before we vote. And Lane, just come in and see if you have connected.
No.
You are. You are.
Am
Talk
I?
to us.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
We've got it. Great. Yep.
You're back on track. Thank you, Lane. I'm going to put the recommendation. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against? Carried. Thank you. And thanks very much, Dan, for that. So next, 2 o'clock, we're having Jim Harlan, Michael Levin, Steve Higgs and Graham Taylor. Hopefully I've said that right. And I see they are, some of them are there, Graham's there, Michael's there. If they would want to come in there, we've got a discussion or the NZTA presentation from them. And I can see Graham. Welcome, Graham.
Morning. Afternoon, sorry.
Yep. And I see Michael. We were going to have Steve and Jim. Are they coming? Do you know?
Apologies from Steve Higgs, and hopefully Jim Harland will be dialing in to us. He's probably just working his way through technology.
Okay. Shall we? Well, he doesn't probably need to see the presentation. So we'll go through the presentation first because he'll have seen the presentation if he's trying to dial in. So if you went through your presentation first, and we've had that presentation given to us earlier, so you could just talk to it, and then we could have questions after that if you like.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, welcome and thanks for this opportunity to engage with the council. Really, this is the upgrade package was announced by the minister back in towards the end of January, and within that there were 2 projects. They're loosely shown on slide 2 around Walnut Ave and Tynwald. Both of those, just referring to slide 3 in the pack that we've sent you as a PDF. Within
numbers, I haven't got numbers, Michael. So if you could just say what's on the top of the slide, we can move to that.
Sure. The one that refers to safe community access. So there were 3 areas around the region that we identified. That's right. As key areas where people are struggling to get onto and across the state highway, largely driven by increasing traffic volumes, and Tynwald was in that mix. So what the minister was very keen to have was to provide safer access, particularly for pedestrians and cyclists and vulnerable school children, to get people from their areas of residence to town centres. And so in the Tynwald discussion, that's recognising the people that are coming from that western northern side of the state highway, and enabling them to interconnect with those facilities, the town centre and the school on the eastern side. So that's what was announced within the upgrade package for Tynwald. The process that is being worked through, the Transport Agency has been asked to develop an establishment report for the minister, and if that hasn't been announced yet, we're in the last throes of finalising that establishment report. Following that, we're developing detailed project delivery plans, and that's to enable and ensure that we have a national approach to how we undertake these projects. So that is still being worked through through the month of April. Following the acceptance of those delivery plans, we'll then be in a position where we can genuinely initiate the project. And that's where we're very keen to engage with Ashburton around Tynwald, and to make sure that we set that project in the right direction to meet the needs and requirements of yourselves.
That's good. And I see Jim Harland has joined us. Jim, we can see you. I'm assuming you can see us.
Yes, I can. Good afternoon, everybody. I had some technical issues getting in.
We all have originally, but we're getting better and better as time goes on. But what I forgot to mention when you first come, now you're all here, is we've asked you along to the council meeting today to brief us on 3 projects you've got going in the district, or 2 in the district, 1 out. One is the lights in Tynwald. You're putting lights in at Tynwald to, as Michael was just talking about, to alleviate the congestion and safety for children and whatever. The lights on Walnut Ave, with replacing the Walnut Ave roundabout, that area, and also the Way Bridge, which you're looking at putting on the other side of the Pryor River. So there's 3 projects there, and Michael's just talked about the Tynwald one. So shall we go to questions on the Tynwald one from councillors first, perhaps, or Michael or Graham or Jim, have you got anything to add before we take questions? Or just looking at Tynwald to start with?
No, the only thing I would add is that there is a need for improvement on that part of the network, both for safety and access reasons. So, Mike's probably given you the rationale of why it's been selected where it is.
He has, and there's no disagreements there. So first up, we have Stuart.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, gentlemen. I've got the 2015 Tynwald Corridor business case. Nowhere does it mention lights at Lagmore Road. It mentions a major roundabout at Graham's Road. And as a local resident of Tynwald, I'd love to see lights at Lagmore Road, because that's why I joined the main road. But to me, it's not the right place. The right place is Graham's Road. You're going to put people down Agnes Street, come up Graham's Road, go along McMurdo Street and up Agnes Street. We've got a restaurant, we've got a petrol station, we've got a hotel and a bar, all on that corner. It seems completely wrong. Why is the business case so different to what you're actually proposing now?
When the business case was being developed, there was a lot of interest and focus around Graham Road as the access through to Lake Hood. What the minister's been very clear about is that he's trying to enable better travel options by all modes, and very much looking for the safe community accesses to enable people from the west side to connect with the east side. Having a controlled, signalised intersection facilitates that movement, as well as providing for, albeit as you refer to, if you're coming from Lake Hood, currently you exit out via Graham Road, and that can be very problematic. Yes, so with the signals at Agnes Lagmore, and this is where it's the minister's identified that this is trying to get one intersection that will serve multi-purposes. You would turn right from Graham's Road via McMurdo, as you've pointed out, and Agnes, and then use the right turn. Equally, what those signals at Agnes and Lagmore do is that they will break the platoons of traffic, so that people from the south who are wanting to make the right turn into Graham's Road to go to Lakewood will get more breaks in the traffic. And, so signals enable that controlled crossing and facilitation for the pedestrians and cyclists, which a roundabout would not be able to do. So this is very much looking at those safer community accesses.
Stuart, you got a supplementary?
Supplementary question. Do you envisage a free turn on the lights from Lagmore Road onto State Highway 1, so that traffic, instead of being held up, can continue to flow if they're turning into Ashburton instead of going straight across?
That's something that we would definitely be needing to look at through the design, because one of the issues we have is that close proximity to the railway crossing, and by enabling that as a free left turn, that would ensure that those people are not caught and then left. If you've got a truck, for example, we don't want the back of the truck being stuck across that rail crossing. The other element that the ministers asked us to look at is a shared path along that grass strip between the railway and the road to enable the cycle movement to be off the road, and that will give us a little bit more space to work with that median to try and facilitate some of those other right turn movements at streets further along, such as Wilkin. So this is the detail that we'd like to, when we get the go ahead, and we'd like to engage with you in detail in May.
Great. John?
Yeah, have there been any traffic counts done on traffic coming out of Graham Street and the traffic coming off Lagmore Road to support where you're now intending to put these lights?
There have been counts done. I mean, both of those roads are council roads, and they periodically do their counting. We do know the volumes. I don't have them off the top of my head. The Lagmore Road, it's not so much about the volume. It's about ensuring we've got connectivity for those people that are living on that side of the highway. And some of those people are seeking to turn right and travel south. And so, again, the signals there at Lagmore will facilitate that safe right turn manoeuvre. And that's the objective that the ministers asked us to be investigating.
Diane?
Thank you. Welcome, gentlemen. And it's so good to see something moving forward on this. I live and breathe this situation every day. And I was on that corridor project group when it was going 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ago now. At that time, they looked into the plan for Lagmore Road and discounted it due to the high cost of putting lights on a crossroad where I believe you need a right turning lane, a through lane and a left turning lane. And I guess that's why it was never progressed. But yeah, I can see issues getting people to Agnes Street to get into those crossings by the volumes that come up Graham's Road every day, but also the people in the northeast side of Tynwald will all be tracking along there to get to Agnes Street, which I can see it creating a few issues that'll have to be carefully thought through. But in a nutshell, yes, I'm thrilled to be seeing something actually done, because there's 23,000 vehicles a day on that main highway now.
So just following up on that, yeah, Michael, you might just want to talk about, for vehicles coming up Graham Street that want to do a right turn to go into Ashburton CBD, if you will, they'll be turning at McMurdo, I think. And will there be some improvements to make that right turn easier for them to then access Agnes to then go through the lights? Because I presume in busy times, that's what people will do, as opposed to when it's off peak. They could probably go up Graham and then join at State Highway 1 as they do now.
Yeah, I think they'll actually get 2 opportunities through the improvement with the signals via Agnes. Yes, that local road intersection will need to have some redesign, careful lane markings, to guide people towards the safe crossing at the new signals. But equally, if somebody was to go down Graham's to the State Highway, they would also experience an increased number of gaps in the traffic platoons. So, there's further win-wins that we're there. So that's why we believe that's worth us looking at more detail in.
On the cost side, which comes back to the mention of expensive traffic lights, this is a government-decided program, so they've put $6.8 billion on the table, independent of the National Land Transport Funding System. So this is cash we wouldn't normally get. So it's allowed us to probably come up with better solutions than when we're having to try and prioritise this work against everything nationally.
Great, good to hear. Thank you.
All right, Lynette?
Yes, I'm actually pleased to see something going ahead here, because I use this corridor every time I come to town. But yeah, I was just worried about Agnes Street with boats and trailers going up to town and blocking all those entrances into the tavern and stuff. But what about the 50-tonne trucks that are going to be having to go along McMurdo Street, which is a residential street, to turn out at these lights? That's my next concern. Is it going to chew up a residential street, and are they going to upgrade that section for us?
That's certainly something that will be investigated through the progression of the project.
Okay, Stuart. Stuart.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've actually got the traffic flow figures. They are a few years old, but contrary to what we all believe, actually, the Agnes Lagmore Road has got substantially more traffic than Graham's Road. I've got AM, PM, and off-peak figures, and every time of day there's more traffic on the Lagmore Road intersection than there is on Graham's Road, which surprises me.
Okay, thank you. So, councillors, I think we're all in agreement that putting those traffic lights on that corner is where they should go. I think I haven't heard anything. Yeah, they are. So, Michael and Jim and Graham, you're going to develop up some detailed plans of this, how you're going to do it now, and bring them back to us. And did I hear May? Is that about May? You can do that?
Yes, we'll be aiming for May. We'll confirm the dates, with you when we'll come back and have a more detailed conversation.
Great. And the likely start date for actually physically doing some works, when do you think that would be for that intersection?
There'll be a number of discussions that we need to have with the adjacent businesses, so it will be some time into next year that we'd be looking to get things started. It just depends on how those adjacent conversations go. Okay,
that's great. So we move on to Walnut Ave, where the Walnut Ave roundabout State Highway 1 is at the moment, and have a look at what you're planning on doing there, or is there no different to what the plans were going back to about 3 years, even before, perhaps?
Yeah, no, that's right. The replacement of the two roundabouts on West and East Street are looking to be replaced with traffic signals. Originally those signals were proposed, driven by delays caused by the roundabouts, but as we were working through the Christchurch Dunedin program business case, it became very obvious that the safe access for the number of children connecting with the high school and the intermediate, was, equally, if not more important. And that then again leads itself to traffic signals looking to control those movements. The complication with having both of those signals on either side of the rail corridor is that you need some very smart coordination. And yes, the project is still the same. We would be finalising our detailed design. This one is obviously a lot more further progressed than Tynwald. And we've got some discussions that we need to resolve with Kiwi Rail. But then we're in a position where we can move into construction on that once we've got those agreements signed off.
When do you think that might be, Michael, the actual start date for construction there?
Again, we're hoping for next year, but it will again depend on some of those adjacent conversations.
Because I think there's also some work to do on our domain. Looking at moving an entranceway there was all part of it as well. Just not wondering whether things have changed there or not.
No, things would not have changed from what you would have seen previously.
Good. So, and a question for you, Jim, on that one, 6.8 million, is it, to do those two jobs? Did you say that was the figure?
I think Jim was referring to the whole package of 6.8 billion.
That was the national package.
Yeah. So,
just to put that in context, our normal sort of NLTP spends about 14 billion over 3 years. So, it's a big chunk of work across New Zealand.
Great. That's good. Councillors, any questions for the Walnut Ave side of things? No, all good there. Can we move on to the way station at Wayride, I think you call it, at Rakaia? And we've also got some plans which were sent through to us on that one. And,
right, so is Graham on the line? Graham Taylor?
Graham is,
Yes.
yep.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yep.
There you go, Graham.
Okay, so basically this way station is one of 12 throughout the country. And it's driven by the amount of overloading that's occurring out there, and also the number of trucks that are struggling to keep their brakes into a reasonable level of service. So both of these sites have a way bridge that operates as a rolling way bridge, so they go across them at 5 kilometres per hour, and their accuracy in the weighing is as accurate as a static way bridge. And the roller brake machines in there are similar to the ones used by VTNZ. The big problem is between certificates of fitness, some of these trucks can be doing 180,000 kilometres, so things do go wrong with them. We've got one of those fully operational at Paengaroa in the Bay of Plenty at the moment, and what they've found there is 65% of trucks have some kind of brake deficiency, which is a bit scary when you think about how heavy those vehicles are, and their ability to brake is very critical.
What about the overloading stats? Is about
the
20%,
overloading is, yeah, the overloading is about 20% of all vehicles, and given that half of the vehicles are empty, that means about 40% of loaded vehicles are overloaded. That varies quite a bit throughout the country. I think at Glasnevin it's about 25%, and what we found was from the operation at Glasnevin is something like 15%, 15 vehicles are responsible for something like 50% of the overloading. So each of those operators has been visited, and the overloading stats have gone down quite dramatically because they know that we've got 24/7 data which we can address other issues such as ruck payments and that sort of thing. So they're quite effective at creating a conformance approach. I'd much prefer that we didn't have any infringements issued and that everyone was conforming, but that's probably a forlorn hope. The location of these stations is quite critical. Essentially, Canterbury has lots of flat area, lots of parallel roads, and so it's very easy for trucks to drive around the way stations if we don't locate them in the right places. So the two major ones we've got in planned for the South Island is the one at Glasnevin, which is just south of the Waipara River. It's very hard to get around that one, and this one at Rakaia. The sites are pre-screened by high-speed data systems. So basically there are a couple of steel plates on the road and an automatic number plate recognition camera. And what those do is they select the vehicles that are potentially overweight, put it into a single vehicle record, and that vehicle record is transmitted to a central system. That central system checks whether the truck has got a permit or whether it's potentially overloaded. And if it's potentially overloaded, the number plate of the truck gets displayed on a VMS sign, and the truck is required to pull into the weigh station. What we've found at Glasnevin is 94% of the trucks we pull in get an infringement. So the system is working actually slightly better than we expected. We expected between 85 and 90%. The location at Rakaia, I'm trying to find a good location on that highway is quite difficult. What we were originally going to put it on the corner of Main Rakaia Road, but the speed of vehicles coming over the rail overbridge was such there was only about 10 seconds of time between the visibility of them coming into view and reaching the intersection. Normally we like 16 seconds for trucks turning in an intersection, so we moved it to North Rakaia Road. Now, to enhance the safety of that site, there is a permanent speed limit reduction proposed, but in the interim, we're looking at putting up real signs, which are activated by vehicles at the intersection or in the turning bays. And those real signs will initially reduce the speed limit to 70 kilometres an hour. And if we get an 80 kilometre an hour permanent speed limit, they will drop down to 60 kilometres per hour. So that'll make it safe. They make it safe in two ways. We get quite good observance of those speed limits. The other thing we get is people's heightened awareness that something is happening. So we've got a few of those throughout the country, and we've found that the crash rate has almost disappeared at those intersections. I've been to the site 4 times, twice with people from the Christchurch office and twice with police. And we've done a full safety audit on it, and we've done a full traffic assessment, which has been, both of which have been reviewed by some very experienced people. So in addition to the installation of the weigh station, we're looking at moving the rest area access to be opposite North Rakaya Road, so we can have a turning bay for that as well. And that will also trigger the real sign. Kiwi Rail have given us their approval for that, subject to some final design details. We will also have acceleration lanes or acceleration shoulders. There'll be widened shoulders to allow the trucks to accelerate along the shoulder and get up to about 60 kilometres an hour before they need to rejoin the traffic. And that's about it.
Okay, I'm sure councillors have got questions, and I have a few. I don't think anyone here says you shouldn't have a weigh station. And we'll hear in a minute, the people I've spoken to, including the police, think it's in the wrong place in between the two bridges for pulling in, pulling out, and speed of traffic and those sorts of things, holding it up and dropping it down to 60k might slow things down too, but I'm not a traffic engineer. But are you aware of that building will be in a floodplain which goes under a metre, 3/4 of a metre of water at times?
Yeah, we're aware of that. We've taken advice from the regional council on setting the foundation level for the site.
Okay, and just before I go to some other councillors, there is a weigh station there at the moment. It was put in probably 20 years ago or 25. The old system where you had to put the scales in and drive over it, and to my knowledge, it's never ever been used. But why wouldn't it be? Why hasn't it been used over the years?
I think the problem in there is that to make that site safe to use, we do need to have some safety interventions, and those safety interventions generally only come with major projects. So putting the real signs in, the extra turning bays, that sort of thing, makes it immensely safer than the piece of road is now. In terms of the police have been fully involved in the site selection. So some quite senior police, I've been there with senior police people who are involved in road safety. So I'm a bit surprised to hear that you've got police saying it's not a good site.
More constables rather than senior police, but yeah, we've got questions here, and Angus, you're first.
Hello, Jim, Mr. Mayor.
Hi, Angus.
Has any consideration been given to assisting the upper North Bank Rakaya rating district, so you don't have water flowing around this? That's my first question. I know you said you're raising the building height, but there's still water around there more than occasionally. And so will you be contributing to the rating district that's trying to halt the water from coming through there?
I'm not sure I can answer that question. So normally roads don't pay. This is part of the road network, and roads don't pay rates. So certainly we're looking at the culvert under the road next to Kiwi Rail, just up by the just north of North Rakaya Road. But that's the only thing we're looking at. Okay,
the last question, Mr. Mayor, is there seems to be move afoot to slow down completely the travelling time from the Ashburton District to Christchurch City. What are the chances of putting a extra passing bay in just over the rail bridge to alleviate any frustration that might exist at having to slow down to 60?
I'm not sure what's in the corridor plan. Is Mike still? Mike, are you still there?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, no, I've just unmuted. No, we don't have any current plans for further passing lanes along there. That's something that we'll be monitoring as we move forward. The overbridge itself poses some safety concerns, and hence having people travel slower over that bridge and equally across the Rakaya Bridge. Yes, it's going to add a few extra seconds on the journey to Christchurch, but safety is front and foremost at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment it's 100 k's through there, which at times is really too fast because, you know, there's turning traffic and so on. But the 60 or the 70, depending on, you know, whatever the speed limit is triggered by the REORs, that will only be triggered when there is something in a right turn bay or pulling off. So if that doesn't occur, like, you know, low traffic volume periods, you'd be travelling at whatever the posted speed. And as Graham said earlier, I think there is a proposition longer term to potentially look at that bridge right through Rakaya into the township at 80. So that would be the normal speed unless there was a reason triggered by a REORs for someone coming from a side road or a turning, then it would drop down to make it safer for those passing manoeuvres to happen.
What's your plan when the road is 4-laned? About where the spot, you still have the way station at the spot?
Well, we don't have a plan to 4-lane the road at the moment. If we did, we'd be designing probably a new route from scratch, personal view from Rolleston all the way through. I don't think you could easily graft 4 lanes onto the existing carriageway all the way. So you'd have to do a pretty substantive design exercise before you could answer that question, Angus.
Thank you, Jim.
John?
If your paramount view is one of safety, why the hell are you putting this way station in such a ridiculous place when you've got the whole straight between Dunsandel and Bankside to put a way station in? First question.
One of the problems is that Canterbury's rather well endowed with parallel roads, so it's very easy for vehicles to avoid the way station. In terms of safety, this is probably one of the safer pieces of road. It certainly has been in the last 5 years in terms of serious and fatal crashes. And but with the work we're doing there with the turning bays, acceleration lanes and the REORs, it'll make it safer for all motorists. I think one of the things I forgot to mention was we don't expect more than 6 to 8 trucks an hour to be going into this way station. Simply because of the pre-screening keeps the numbers down quite low.
Second question is, if you restrict or put a speed limit from the other side of the overbridge to Rakaya of 80k, is that not going to hold up traffic? Already during busy holiday times, I've been across there, and because of the design of the Rakaya River Bridge, people automatically slow down to about 90, 95k on that bridge. So you get road traffic build-ups between the Overdale corner and Bankside. This is not going to help that situation at all.
So each of these way stations will have an operating plan, which will be worked through with police. In times when it's not practical to operate the station, they won't operate it because it is, they're part of the police road safety team. So there'll be times, I've been down there a couple of times, I've been down there, heavy dimension vehicles have been going across the bridge, and of course there's a large queue, and we're aware of when flooding happens, there's some queues of traffic as well. So the site will have an operating plan, which the police will operate it only when it's safe to do so.
So what you're saying is over Christmas, New Year, Easter, Queen's birthday, such other times, the way station won't be operating?
may not operate all hours of the day, but it could operate some hours of the day. The operating plan's still got to be worked through with police.
So I have a question, Graham. The pre-screening, is the trucks going over the thing in the road which indicates that they're overweight. What percentage of trucks go over that are overweight?
Glasnevin, I can't talk about this one down here because we don't have any records down here, but at Glasnevin it was something like 20% of trucks, loaded trucks, were overweight. That has dropped down quite dramatically.
Yeah, you should have information for that site because there's one of those things put in about 2 years ago, could be 3, just right by the bridge.
Yes, but we didn't align any of those records. Those records were basically the weight was aligned with strain gauges on the bridge that compared the weight of the trucks with its effect on the bridge. We didn't record any of the data as to whether the truck was legal or not.
So you couldn't match up the number plate to what it theoretically could be carrying. It might have a permit to have a higher weight, for example.
That's right. We've only just developed that system in the last year or so to be able to do that. And not only that, that way of motion at the bridge, we're quite limited in what we can use data for. So basically, if we put that in just to check the effect on a bridge, then we can only use the data for that. We can't use it for identifying overweight vehicles.
Okay, just one more question from me before you go to John. You say this is the best site. You've looked at all the other sites. Well, I don't know if you looked at other sites, but you deem this to be the best site. I think the best site, my view, would be sitting in Rakaia, and there's some land behind Ravensdown building which has just been subdivided for industrial use, which would take this waste station in there nicely, I would think, to do that. But you did mention that the trucks could, you didn't use the word escape, but I will. They'll take another route. But I don't see how they would get away from you, because before they come into this waste station, you've photographed them, you've checked their weight, and they've indicated they're over. And if the vehicle doesn't come past your station, they've obviously escaped, but you know who they are. And if it happened on a regular basis, I'm sure you would track them down. So my thoughts are, you don't put this waste station there because of the safety reasons. You purchase some land in Rakaia and put it there. It would be safer and it'd be in an industrial zone, not an agricultural area, and it would suit more people, I think, if there. But welcome for your comments on that.
So we did look at that. The big problem is Thompson's Track. So trucks heading north could easily avoid the site by going down Thompson's Track, and we wouldn't have any screening that would detect them. They would just drive past. We wouldn't have any information at all, and they would probably knock Thompson's Track around quite hard. With the number of overweight vehicles that are knowingly overweight and would deliberately divert. We could capture the southbound ones, but we need to capture both directions.
Unless you use Thompson's Track as your entry into your waste station, which would be pull them off the highway into your station.
But then we could do that, but we wouldn't have the screening on Thompson's Track. The other problem is if someone decides not to go into the site and deliberately drives past, the police have to try and work out which route they went down if they want to pursue them.
Correct, they would, but I'm more thinking of the safety side of things than ease of getting these trucks into, or police having to chase them to pull a truck in. But the discussion.
Yeah.
I think I've said it. Jim, do you want to comment?
Well, it's just again another question to Graham, because safety is obviously a big concern. Perhaps you can talk councillors through the safety audit, what was involved, who was involved, and what did they say?
Yep. So basically, the safety auditors were an ex-employee of NZTA who developed the Kiwi Wrap system, the Safe Road system. He was one of the auditors, and the other auditor was based in Napier, ex-Auckland, and he has been doing safety audits for more than 40 years. So the two best safety auditors in the country. they raised issues about the speed limit and the risk on that piece of road, and proposed some options of reducing the speed limit, or they included a roundabout as an option. Of course, roundabouts are very expensive, and that would cause more delays to the traffic than what we're doing. We've worked that through. Our consultant took the safety audit comments, went back to it, reviewed what they were proposing, upgraded the design, and then we put that proposal through to the safety engineer in our Christchurch office for review, and the Christchurch team reviewed it, and they came back with a comfort level that the work we'd done would make the site safe.
Okay, is that safety audit available to the council to have a look at?
Absolutely.
Right. If we could send it through, then our staff can have a look at it, and they should be, they could do a peer review of it and see that they're happy with it. Diane?
Thank you. And my question is, if a large transport company sought to, if they purchased that land and sought to set up a big company there where 20 or 30 trucks were coming per day, what would have NZTA's response have been to that from a safety perspective?
20 or 30 trucks a day, I would imagine, wouldn't be too much problem. The site we've got here is controlled by police, so it is vastly different to, say, a service station or a large trucking company, and because their focus is on safety. So if times of the day when it was problematic for traffic, for safety, they would just close the site down.
So, but what I was really seeking was, would a big transport company be allowed to set up where you're proposing to set up? Yes or no?
That would be an interesting question. They wouldn't be allowed to. They would have to do an extensive amount of work, same level of work as we've done. But even then, there is the overriding factor that they're commercially driven rather than safety driven.
Thank you.
Just, I'm thinking about consultation, and when we just talked about the lights in Tynwald, you were when Michael was talking, he was talking about developing up the plan, and he was going to talk to the businesses that were around there and see what their thoughts were, and work through that, which is fine. So, do you not consult with the people of, say, Rakaia or even the road users and see what their thoughts are on should this weighbridge station be there or not? Because they're the road users, they're the ones going to use it every day. They're concerned about the safety. You've got the people who've done your safety audit who come from not Rakaia and don't use the road. So, and they've said it's fine, and I'm happy with that, but they don't use it. They're not going to have to put up with it. And you can make the road safe by just lowering the speed limit, and they've done or proposing to do that. If it doesn't work at 70k, which you've got on the plan, and Jim talked about 60k, then you might have to lower it to 50, and etc. to make it safe. And you'll make every road in the country safe if you keep lowering the speed limit. So I'm just wondering if you're using the wrong mechanism to make it safe, as in keep lowering the speed of it. Well, it's one of the mechanisms. You've got pull-off bays and that as well. But think about the consultation. Should you be consulting with the people who are using the road more than you have?
What we did was consult with the heavy haul industry. We first raised this issue 2.5 years ago at a trucking show in Christchurch. We didn't talk about the particular site, but we talked about having a site on this corridor close to Rakaia. We've also, the National Trucking Organisation Road Transport Forum are very highly aware of it, and they're very much the support. Because it's in a rural land area, we normally only consult with the immediate property owner, simply because the property owner owns a vast tract of land for quite a distance. Because it wasn't over the bridge, there was no consultation with the community in terms of direct effect on their community.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to go back to the speed thing again. At the moment, that highway is operating at 100. There is a proposal as part of the overall corridor review to potentially drop it to 80. This proposition here is for there to be an activated lower speed sign if there's something, a heavy truck or whatever, in the right-hand turn bay coming from the north being pulled over and going into the site, or there is some vehicles coming on side roads in this area. So it's only under those circumstances that the speed limit would be dropped. That's my understanding, Graham.
That's correct, and it's only over a distance of something like 400 to 450 metres.
Yeah, just make one comment on the consultation. You've talked to the trucking show that was up in Christchurch. You've talked to the big trucking people who look after all the trucks, who probably is a Wellington, I assume. If you talked to the local truck operators, as in Wearing or Rural, and the others that are around, I think they would have a different view being local. So I'm just, yeah, and they won't be saying that you shouldn't have a weigh station. We all agree, if you want a weigh station, it's fine. All we're saying is, can you put it in the right place? And we don't think you've got this one in the right place. So we'd like you to have another look and reassure us you've got it in the right place somehow, because we're not in agreement. I think councillors are nodding their heads there now that they don't believe it's in the right place, because we all use that stretch of road.
Well, it has been fully safety audited. It has been fully traffic analysed. I can give you both of those reports. Those reports have both been fully peer reviewed, and they've both come back and said the site will work.
Okay. For any further questions, councillors? Angus? No, you just, yeah, Angus. Push your button, Angus. No, you're not coming in. You're still muted. Let's try again. There you go.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Graham, I think we understand what you're saying. On the other hand, you have a proposal out there that we in this district think is going to put a cheese grater from Rakaya to Rolleston up, which consists of wire ropes. So that's also in the back of our mind as well when you talk about safety. And we're the ones that are slow, are having trips that are more slower all the time to Christchurch. We've got cars, we've got policing of slow cars in both lanes on passing bays, just not happening. And frustration, I know from past experience, from what NZTA has told me, that frustration is part of the big safety thing. People get frustrated, so they pull out in a dangerous situation. And I'm totally with you on that. But yeah, we're not convinced. Thank you, but thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Angus, and councillors. I think we've probably got to the end of the discussion. I think Jim and Graham, you've got the idea that you were just not happy with the location, so perhaps you could have a think. But we'll look forward to those two reports that you've had done, one safety and one, there was another one, two reports you could send them through. Jim, you've got our email addresses, so that could come that way. That'd be great. But thank you very much for coming today and telling us about those projects. We're looking forward to the projects in Tynwald, and the sooner the better, really. We've been waiting a long time, so we're very happy that you're doing those, or the government's given you funds to do those, and yeah, the sooner the better for them. So thanks very much. So thank you.
Good. Oh, well, thank you for the opportunity to have a conversation. We appreciate it. Great. And have a great Easter and keep safe in the bubble.
Yeah, thanks, Jim, and same to you. We're having a Easter. It won't really be an Easter. We'll just be same day as the day as yesterday, really, except we'll still be at home, so we're not going anywhere. So
no, we're not. Just a different room, maybe.
It's vacation. Thanks very much, councillors. Break out for a cup of tea. So we'll put it on pause. I think Ruben, you can pause, and I think we just leave it running, do we, and disappear and come back at 10 to 3, so 3:05. Does that sound okay? Thumbs up. Yep. 3:05. We'll come back on and get resume with item number whatever it is. It's around the rates and the
14.
Right. See you at 3:05. 1, we have a recommendation there with a report, and we have Paul here, the author of that report. Councillors, can we have questions first, and then we'll look at moving the recommendation secondly? Questions first, please. Stuart, you've got your hand up. Was it up from before? Paul, do you need to add anything to your report, or just briefly state what is in your report?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The report, you'll know that the budget was prepared before the lockdown, and that the proposed rate increase was going to be 4.88%. But the economic situation has changed, and this report gives council the option to reconsider whether the 4.88% is still appropriate to go forward, or whether they want to reduce it. The report gives you a number of options to reduce, or you could use some of the combination of those options. We can take on more debt. The council does have capacity to take on more debt. That debt is relatively cheap. But what we're looking at is taking debt on, if that's the option, to fund operating expenditure, which is a change from what we've done in the past. That is permitted under legislation. The focus of savings, if you want savings, is really on operating expenditure, not capital expenditure, because most of the capital expenditure is either contractually committed or it's funded from loans, and the interest costs are relatively low, so there won't be a real effect on rates there. The other question that you need to have a think about is whether you want to proceed with the fees and charges increases that we stated also at the time when we were doing the 4.88%. So there's a whole lot of options there. There's some suggestions on where savings can be made, and you can work through those. We could try and identify further savings, or you could take one or a number of the combinations of options to get down to a rate, if you want to reduce the rate increase, down to a level that you think is more realistic than what we started off with. I'm happy to answer any questions.
And John, you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, we've got 5 options there, which to me all need to be discussed individually. But I just wonder how those options actually tie into the recommendation that council approves changes in the draft 2020-2021 as identified as a result of this report. Are we voting on that, or are we voting on which options we are going to follow?
Through Mr. Mayor, I think what you need to do is, in the recommendation, maybe hold the recommendation and have the recommendation as summarising effectively the changes that you're going to make, because there really is no time to get the annual plan through by 30 June. You're not really going to have a time to have another look at it. So the changes that you make today will be built into the budget, built into the annual plan that you'll adopt in June now. So you won't get a chance to have another go at this. This is going to be it. So I think the recommendations are really the changes that you're going to make today.
And I think through you, Mr. Mayor, just to follow up John's question and Paul's answer, is that we were asked to show how the rates increase could be less than 4.88%, and we've given you a range of options, but there is no particular recommendation from staff as to which option is the right approach in these circumstances. So it's fairly a discussion and decision for council, and all we've done is show you a range of ways in which you might achieve the outcome that you asked us to explore.
Before I go to Liz, Paul, I have a question around Experience Mid-Canterbury, and we discussed them this morning about things that were changed there. Has those changes that we moved this morning been factored into your calculations here?
They weren't in the report you've got, but in the worksheet that's in there, I've amended it on the fly to include that, so I can update that.
Is that page 98, your worksheet?
Sorry, just a minute.
It is, yep.
Yep, that's correct.
So Experience Mid Canterbury savings to be had there are not in that worksheet you've got.
They're not in your report.
No. So that would be.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, they would effectively come off the 492. That is still there to solve, if you like.
Right. I see. Yep. Okay. Liz.
Thank you. I've just got two questions. So, say someone's paying about $2,000 in rates annually. What if we get to a 0% rate rise? How much is that average person going to save per annum? Can you tell me that off the top of your head?
No, I can't. I can go and have a look while the debate is going on to have a look at that, but it's going to be quite different depending on where that person lives.
Okay.
And remember that the overall rate percentage, say 4.88, not everybody got that. And in fact, with the increase in the valuation base this year, there was virtually, unless you're a very big ratepayer or a very small one that falls outside the norm, there were very few people, if any, getting that 4.88%. But it depends totally on where you live and where those savings come as to what the effect's going to be. Okay. So I really can't answer that at this moment.
Rachel, you did pop your hand up there for a second. Did you have an answer? Okay, if you haven't.
Yeah, no, sorry, I don't have an answer off the top of my head. I was just going to say basically what Paul said.
Right, thank you. Next up, Stuart.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. That sheet we got here with 325 savings, is that 325 savings or 325 income that we're not going to get? That's my first question.
Which page is that sheet on?
97.
That's your fees and charges increase or decrease, yeah.
That figure of $326,000 on page 97, if you remove your fees and charges increase that you signalled, we're going to lose income of $326,000. So you'd need to add that on to the following worksheet as further additional savings if you want to reduce the rates. So that was, if your fees and charges go up per what you said they were going to do, that was the $326,000.
Yeah, supplementary one, Neil. Yeah. On page 98, savings in agency budgets of 45,000. Is that a full 4.8 reduction, or is it just the reduction on the extra that we were going to give the agencies in the 2021 annual plan compared to 1920?
Through Mr. Mayor, I took 4.88% of the new budgeted figure. So if we had increased it in our draft budget, then I took the increased figure.
I see. If we went back and maintained what they got in 1920, it would be less than 45,000. It might be only 15,000 or something.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to go and have a look and see how much increase we gave them, if any, in those organisations.
Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One question, and then I'd like to make a comment, if I may. Have we actually decided that we are going to change the rates? We seem to be spending a lot of time on what we can do and where we could cut. And the philosophical argument, have we actually ever decided that we should reduce the rates? And I don't think we should, because I believe the proposed budget is fair, it's well reasoned and modest. And if by some chance there are ratepayers who struggle with this increase, then we have procedures in place that can help them on a one-to-one basis. In my calculations, the increase in rates varies between $3 and $10 a month. And as Paul says, it depends where your property is and what your categories are. But I do not believe that's too onerous. And I believe we can do more good for our community by having everything in place as planned and being ready to move as soon as we're able to, rather than by reducing rates. And I'm sure our public would want our parks and our sports fields, theatres, galleries and libraries, etc., up and running as quickly as possible. And this may not happen if we have pruned too much money and or staff from our budget. And being able to move promptly and get on with our projects, I believe, will do more to kickstart our economy than by reducing rates. I'm happy to move a motion, but at this stage, I would...
Not ready for a motion just yet. We're still in question time. We'll wait for a motion to come later. We've done all the questions.
Well, I think it's just a time for clear thinking. I don't think there's any necessity to reduce the rates, the proposed rate increase. It's modest, it's minimal, and there are ways and means to assist those who may struggle with it.
Thanks, Rod. Just a couple of points of clarification there. You talked about why we are making this decision. Well, we asked the staff to bring us this report on ways we can reduce our rates. We haven't made a decision. We're going to do that very shortly, and there's options there from nothing, which you're proposing, right up to getting it to as close as we can to zero. But you've just made one comment about reducing staff. There's no mention of reducing staff in this budget of council staff. There's no mention of that in there.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor, that may be a slip of tongue.
Okay, next up we've got Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What you said a lot, what I was quite keen to say myself as well. Since I've been here this afternoon, I had two people contacting me, ratepayers in this district, who basically tell me both to carry on the way it is and not change it. One is self-employed and his business is standing still. The other person is a pensioner and says, get on, we've got a good district. It's only going to be $2 or $3 a week. What are we talking about? Get going, keep this district the way it should be. I'm on Roger's side with this. I can't see it as a major thing for what we're asking for. When the budget came in for us, when we went through the budget with the staff, I thought they were really well prepared. They were asking for things they needed, not cold-plated stuff. So I think the budget that we've got is realistic. If we want to go down, if that is still the main feeling that some of the councillors wants to bring it down, I will be happy with it as long as we don't get any extra debt. I think if you do something, it has to be out of savings. But if I look at page number 98, the savings what is getting made by the council staff and leaving some positions out, I'm not sure if that's a real saving. To me, it's almost a no-no. We shouldn't do that. You know, we should make sure that this organization works the best it can with the best staff it's got and in the best possible way. That is how you make savings. Work efficient.
We're wandering off a bit and moving away from questions, which we should be on questions at the moment. So if we could stick to questions, and then we'll get into debate mode as soon as the questions are tidied up. Angus?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question, and it's on page 65 of the, if I may have a question, can I instead of debating? That'd be all right, thank you.
Any questions? Yeah?
Page 65, and in item paragraph 26, dot point second, it talks about the deferral of a GIS officer position saving $80,000. Can someone prove to me that this will actually save $80,000? Or if we actually had the position, would we actually save more dollars? Like, for example, if we spent 80,000 here, would we actually save 160? I asked the question because there are two leadership team members of council have made representations to us at our last meeting that they wanted this position because it was going to have savings in their department. So I'm asking, what are the savings?
Perhaps I can just answer that first up, and then Paul might like to answer that. The reason that we want to create this position is because it will improve the way we work in the office. So there's no question that we would far prefer this position be created, and that we have someone expanding in this area, or expanding the work that we can do in this area. Trying to say that it will save twice as much as the person costs is not an answer that we can give that directly. It's not an equation that exists in that fashion. But if we employ this new person, they will enable us to do work that isn't currently being able to be done, and will certainly make, particularly in the planning and in the assets infrastructure area, more seamless and more efficient. But I don't think we can sit here and say spend 80, save 160. It's not that simple to do. But Paul, you might like to expand on that.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. It certainly will improve how we deal with information with the public and with our contractors. It will help us lift our mobile solutions that we use, and it will provide cover to a position. At the moment, we have a critical position at the council which has very little backup and support, and it will actually minimise our risk in that area as well. So it will provide a better, certainly improvements that other teams will find will be able to access a lot more useful information, but that includes the public as well.
Stuart? Oh, Angus, you still got another one. Angus?
Supplementary, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Going to congratulate the two previous speakers on their very, very fine words. Unfortunately, they've put a dollar figure on it for us, and I was trying to get a dollar figure out of them, and I never got it, but the explanation was very fine words. I'll consider.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Does our budget include the community services person that we've been talking about employing to help environmental services?
I can confirm that the budget does still include the creation of the new Group Manager of Community Services. And in having proposed this report, or proposed the savings that you might like to consider, we haven't proposed that job not be created, i.e. we believe the rationale for creating that role is as strong now as it ever was. And in particular, if you recall, the rationale for that role was to have our infrastructure services group manager really focused on those big projects and supporting his team that he's currently really stretched across a very broad portfolio. We have the same rationale in the business support area, where we want our group manager to really focus on some big items in both the finance and the IT team in particular. And so the creation of the community services group manager isn't something that we are putting up to you as a saving. We believe the need for that role continues.
Diane?
Thank you. Two questions. Just regarding the rate, if we stay at our 4.88%, this is probably for Paul to answer. I know normally when we set a rate, the urban people end up being about 2 to 2.5% more than that, and the rural is less. So my question is around, do we know roughly what that would look like? And my concerns around that would be that the ones who pay a bit more are probably the elderlies and pensioners who do own their own homes, and also families who have bought homes. I just want to know if that still would apply.
Through Mr. Mayor, when I looked at those figures for the 4.88%, the rural were actually getting the higher movement rather than the urban, because the urban water and wastewater rate, I think from memory, had dropped. So that had more of an impact there. So the rate rises, I think, were 1.5 in urban, and I think 4.7 or something like that generally in rural. So it was the rural this time that was getting the increase, or the higher increase.
Thank you. And my second question was around the savings and interest costs, which is with having our new Fitch rating is great. And I see you've put that we possibly could save about 400,000 there, but can we squeeze any more out of that?
No, I don't think you can. But if you took your 400,000 just on its own, plus saving in district promotion, you'd be getting down to about a 3.4% increase just out of those two. But what the $400,000 with hindsight probably was overstated in our draft budget anyway. And if you're not going to make, if you decide not to make any changes, my recommendation is you'd make that one.
Thank you.
Because that would fix what I think is an overstatement, because we're not going to spend it.
Cool. Thank you.
Liz?
Thank you. Can we decide today, either do we have to decide 0% or a 4.88% rise, or can we sort of pluck a number out of them and say, how about just a 2% rise? It's going to be really hard to sort of, I mean, the recommendations there of what we can sort of get rid of, I suppose, to save our rates. It's going to be very hard to kind of say yes or no to some of those. And I know we got an email yesterday from Safe and Mid-Canterbury saying that they're busier than ever at the moment. They are projecting that there's going to be a lot of services that they're going to have to provide in the future because of the lockdown, and that if they could just keep their level of service to what it was in the previous financial year, they would be happy. But having a 4.8% drop would actually mean that their level of service would drop. So I mean, it's going to be really hard to pick and choose among that. Can we just sort of say, hey, let's just do a 1% rise or a 2% rise or something like that?
Well, that's what we are here for today, because that's what you're asked for. What savings are there? And Paul and his team have got it down to what's in front of us. So we could pick and choose out of that if you wanted. Yep. Paul, do you want to add to that?
Mr. Mayor, it might be helpful. Ultimately, you're going to have to decide what percentage of rate increase you're comfortable with. And the report was done on not recommending actually what that rate was. It was just saying you can reduce it or you can have it at 0. If you decide that you, for example, you want a 2% rate increase, then we would work in the options that we've got there to deliver the 2%. So it's really a council decision on what that percentage, either should it move, should it come down, to what level it should come down, or should it be 0?
Yeah.
And to get to 2%, you would need to take off about 700,000, I think. Would it be approximately that?
Approximately, yeah.
Hamish, you had something to say?
No, I was just reflecting on the comments that Liz made, and one of the challenging things for us in putting these up is we're making arbitrary choices from the existing budget already. Everything that we put through into the draft budget that you've previously adopted, we believed was valid and useful expenditure, including provision for some money for rates for wage increases for our staff. And I don't doubt that Safer Mid-Canterbury are busier than they've ever been and doing great work. So too are many of our staff working in extraordinary situations right at the moment and doing great work now and in the future. And it's not any of our preference to put up a 0 wage increase. We would love to be able to have a life as normal opportunity to reward the people for the great work they're doing. What we've done, though, is taken council's request to demonstrate how we might be able to make savings. So I could argue against every single thing in here, other than perhaps the interest saving. But our job here was to put forward stuff that showed how we could make savings. So it isn't easy to pick and choose, as you say.
John next.
Yeah, on page 98, we've got a number of identified savings that staff have given us that we can make. I really don't know whether it's up to us to decide whether we want to take those or not. And if it is not easier just to say to council, we will agree to say a 2% rate increase and you live within that, and that then comes up to the CEO and the managers as to how they spend that money. The other thing which we must remember, if we don't have an increase this year, what's that going to do to next year's rates? I mean, already we're saying, okay, we're not going to have a 4.8% increase this year if that's what council decides. If we were to take that down to 0, that means next year's rate rise is going to be somewhere between 7 and 8%. And I don't know how ratepayers are going to feel about that. My own personal view is that whatever savings can be identified need to be passed on as a rate decrease to the current ratepayers. But even that is rather difficult to come up with. Yes, we can agree with all of those rate reductions on 98, plus the reductions we've seen from this morning's meeting with EMC, which adds to quite an amount. But I would still prefer that we say, okay, let's go for a 1.5% to 2.5% rate increase and leave it up to the CEO and managers to decide how that money should be spent.
Next up is Lynette.
Just going to ask, did I hear Paul say that with savings in the interest rate and a decision made earlier that the rates could come down to 3.4%?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. But if you wanted it, so if you built those two savings in, plus adjusted it for the Methven Community Board slight increase, you'd have to save another 500,000 to get to 2%. So if you wanted 2%, we'd have to save another 500,000 out of the list that you've got there, other than because you've already taken account of the interest rate adjustment. And that would get it down to 2% if that's the figure you wanted.
Can I just say, no, I'd be happy with taking our rates just down to 3.4. I think we all could live with that, with just those savings.
Carolyn?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I take John's point. I think if we decide on the reduction in rates, then it's up to Neil and his team to determine how best they'd like that reduction sort of distributed throughout their business. Personally, I believe we should offer a 0 rates increase, and I think Paul's done a wonderful job of suggesting savings, but I wouldn't recommend one or the t'other. And I think in John's point that in 12 months we'll have to double it, I think that's naive and not really anticipating what the world's going to be like in another 12 months. The virus has had a huge impact on the economy, as you all know better than I do, and I think 12 months things will not be recovered, in my humble opinion.
Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will make a recommendation if I can, or an idea. I would be quite happy to use the savings, the 400,000, to give them as a reduction for the rates. I think everything else, we went through the budget, we said yes, we needed that. Cutting it now, it comes back to us next year, the year after. Let's be real, and 3% or 3.5% is not going to be a huge part.
Liz?
Thank you. I agree. I think taking the 400,000 off, and then also the savings from EMC as well, and then possibly bringing the agencies down to 2.6 or whatever they were, so in line with last year. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, okay. Go to Lynette, and then Roger indicated earlier he wanted to move something. So if that still stands, we'll go to Roger after Lynette.
Okay, I was just going to support that with the interest in just the EMC and leave it at that. As there, if it comes to 3.4, I'm really comfortable with that.
And you're not supporting anything at the moment. We haven't got anything to support, but Roger might have something to bring to us now. He indicated earlier. Roger, have you got something, or was someone else?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and everybody who has spoken has made, I believe, quite valid arguments, but I still think we do not understand the beast we're dealing with regarding the virus, and we don't know how big he's going to get, and we don't know when he's going to finish. But I think we are getting a little bit despondent and thinking it's going to be catastrophic out there and it's not going to come right for 1 or 2 years. And that may be right, but I think it could also possibly be quicker than that. And I'd just like to quote the Minister of Finance. He said, "Don't make rash decisions. It is almost impossible to predict what the future will be. We must not get ahead of ourselves or be too despondent." So the small effect that our original rate increase, suggested rate increase, will have is easily taken care of with those who may struggle. And we have a plan. We can keep everything in place and get on with it. So my preference is to accept option 5, which is no change, but I'd amend that to concur with 1 or 2 of the other speakers about taking the EMC money out and the 400,000 of interest savings. So that's my point of view. I don't know how we put that in a motion. You know, it's yeah. Can you help me?
Yeah, I think what you're after is the status quo, 4.8% less the savings and interest that have been identified, and less the savings that have been identified early this morning in the district tourism area.
Correct. And if someone can word that appropriately, I'd appreciate it.
I'm sure Philippa's tapping away as we speak. I think she might have the bones of that. It wasn't that difficult. Paul, you've got a comment there?
Through Mr. Mayor, just to confirm that I've got a lack of clarity over the fees and charges, because that will impact on the end result here. If you are happy to leave the fees and charges going up on the basis that the report said that they were more discretionary, then what the councillor is recommending will result in 3.4. If you're not prepared to let the fees and charges go up, then the savings is not going to result in 3.4.
I see some nods around there. Roger, you would add in the fees and charges stay the same as per their draft budget.
Correct.
Adding that in. Thanks for that clarification, Paul. So there's a motion being crafted there. Lane, are you looking at seconding it?
Yes, I will. I certainly will second that one. Yeah.
And you will speak to it? You don't have to if you want to.
Yeah, no, I'm quite happy to speak to it. I've said it before. When we went through the whole budget, the draft budget, we had some real good discussions, and we came to 4.8. We were all happy with that. Okay, something came in between, but threw a bit of took us a bit to left or to right, whatever you want to say. But I think we have to honor what we're doing here as councillors. We have to look after the people in this district. And it is the basic things, the water, the sewer, all the things we normally do. And that's what we need the money for. I'm quite happy to use the savings, but we should pay for the services we get. And that's where I see it.
Okay, Stuart.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I hope that we still take into account the UAGC should be at 29.9%, because the 400,000 is split between the two. Experience Mid Canterbury is fully general rate funded, so there must be a variation. I'm sure our UAGC figure will change, but I want to see us kept right at the 29.9%.
Paul's nodded his head, that's where it'll sit. So I have a mover and a seconder with Roger. I'll just go through the recommendation again. It is basically to leave the 4.8% less the interest savings, less the district promotion savings, and keeping fees and charges as per the draft annual budget. And really rough, Paul's indicated that's about a 3.4% increase. And that's rough. It could vary a few points on that. So that's what we're debating now. Carolyn.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Can we separate the two into 2 points, keep the fees and charges as is, and separate the rates issue from the fees and charges in the motion, so we can vote as two parts?
You can do an amendment if you wanted, late at any time.
Can I make that amendment now, that we have a part 1 and a part 2?
And we should identify what the part 1 and part 2 is first.
Well, I think Roger proposed that we keep the rates at 4.8%, taking off the interest, and the other, what else did he mention?
District promotion and fees and charges the same.
And fees and charges should be a separate. Point 2 would be keep the fees and charges the same.
Okay, so you want to separate the fees and charges on its own. Number 1, 4.8% less the interest saving, less the district promotion saving. Then number 2, fees and charges.
And I have just another remark to make, if that's possible, just in response to Lane's supporting his position. I don't think that the water and the sewage are at risk with the reduction in rates that you suggested, Lane. I think it's Paul suggested saving interest costs, GIS officer, removal of provision for salary and wage, welcoming communities.
Okay, Angus?
I'll second Carolyn's procedural motion, if you like. You haven't got one. Also, no, I can't vote for this. I think there's a lot of people going to go through some real tough times yet, and some people who right at the moment are having a good time will, I think, actually end up having a hard time through the next 13 or 14 months, because jobs are not all that secure just yet, although the government has indicated it's going to look after those, but there'll still be a gap in the discretionary spend. I'm for a symbolic 0% rate rise, but borrowing to keep the services at the same level after the savings have clicked in. So that's my position, and that's where I'll be voting.
Thank you. Diane?
I tend to support what Roger was saying. I think we have to remember that the district still has to function, even though I know we're going into tougher times than we're seeing probably right now, but we've still got to be an operational business and keep the district operating. If we have a 0 rates rise, it's attractive, but somewhere along the way we're going to pay the penalty for that. So I support what Roger was proposing.
Thank you. Liz?
Thank you. So are you sure it's a 3.8% rate rise after all of those savings? I think it should be less, shouldn't it?
3.4 is what I said, but Paul might be able to.
Because you haven't accounted in the fees and charges, that's about 1%, is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, the fees and charges are assumed in the calculation to be going up. So, and the other issue I wonder is in Councillor Cameron's amendment, whether they go the other way around, do the fees and charges first, and then that will, if that succeeds, then you'll be able to do your rates debate.
Yeah, I should actually deal with that procedural motion from Councillor Cameron, and which she moved and Councillor Mackay seconded, that we put number 2 as number 1, or keep them separate in line, put the fees and charges number 1 and then the rate decrease at number 2. So I'll put that motion that will happen. In favour, raise your hand. Yep, got the majority there, I think. So we've got it number 1, number 2 at this stage. So who we got next? We've got John. Push your remote, mute John. You're on mute. There you go.
I don't think we have to make a decision. If I look at the New Zealand taxpayers rates freeze dashboard, the Ashburton District Council still planning to hike rates by 4.88%.
Because we haven't met to discuss it yet, so they will update that as soon after the meeting, no doubt. Stuart?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think we should always remind ratepayers, especially people in Ashburton, how low our rates are compared to the rest of New Zealand. We usually come out, I mean, that last rating survey, we were right about 2 or 3, or within the first half dozen, I think it was. I know people won't believe us, but for the infrastructure we've got and the up-to-date the way it is, and even was proposing our new building and everything, rates are reasonably low compared to what the rest of New Zealand are paying. And their infrastructure is nothing like the condition ours is.
Thank you, Roger. You'll have a right to reply shortly, but I'll...
Just a question of procedure, Mr. Mayor. What exactly are we debating at the moment? Are we debating an amendment? Are we debating the original motion? Or whereabouts are we?
We're the original motion, and for the amendment or the procedural amendment, procedural motion changed the order. So we've got number 1, which is the fees and charges. So we're actually probably debating the fees and charges as we speak. As in the motion, I think in your original motion was leave the fees and charges as they are in the draft budget.
Yes.
So we'll do that one as number 1, and then number 2 will be the 4.8% against the savings. So we'll take them one after the other. We could probably debate them both because they are related to each other. We can take them one at a time, but we might debate them both at the same time, if that's okay with the committee. Diane?
Just because of a result of that, I just want to have it crystal clear that the fees and charges, if they stay as per the budget, which was a slight increase, what we're proposing will stay. But if we take the fees and charges back to last year's rate, we've somehow got to save another 326,000 in our budget to keep around the 3.4%. Am I correct?
Yes, you are. Yep.
Thank you.
Carolyn?
I just want to make one very quick remark. I think it's important to note that we're not jeopardising the running of the council if we reduce the rates. Like the council, from Paul's proposal, none of those aspects that have been identified are meaning that the water is not going to be drinkable and the sewerage isn't going to work. I think everything will be carrying on as it is.
Correct. Yeah. I haven't spoken yet, so I'll speak to both the motions. I'll be voting for number 1, fees and charges, to have that increase as per the draft budget. I won't be voting for number 2 with reducing from 4.8 down lower, because I think we should be going as low as we can. And with the savings that the staff have delivered to us, we could run this district by having no level of service drop with those savings they were giving us, and it was going to get a rate increase down to nearer the 1%. But and that's what I'm still wanting for. And I think there was option 4 in the options. I think it was option 4, whatever it was. So I'll be voting against the option number 2, which will be shortly. So if there's any further speakers, we'll take them now. If not, we'll go to the right of reply. Or your right of reply, then we'll have the 2 motions. We'll do number 1 and then we'll do number 2. Vote on them. Roger, right of reply.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure we're looking at this exactly the right way. We seem to have some nervousness about sticking to our original plan because what somebody may think. And I note Councillor Mackay's comment that he was going to go for a nil rate increase, tokenism, that I would call that. I think at this time we really do need some clear thinking. We really do need some rational thought, and we must minimise our rates if possible, but we must balance that with continuing council business. And so I am still of the favour that we stick to the original budget, less the savings that we need in interests and Experience Mid Canterbury, and let the rates, charges and fees stay the same. I can't see any reason personally to change that point of view.
Okay, to vote on this, I think if you could all go to the little reaction screen down the bottom and get it ready, and up there you'll get a thumbs up. So if you're going to vote for it, if you could use the thumbs up, and I'll get Hamish to double check and just count all the thumbs up for the two motions I'm about to put, and we'll do it that way. So if everyone's ready, we'll put the first motion, and it is fees and charges stay as per the draft budget. Ten? Passed. Thank you. The next motion, and I'll read it out, is that the rate increase stay at 4.88% minus the savings and interest, minus the district promotion savings. Have I got that motion correct? I have. So if we could get, again, the people who want to vote for it to give the thumbs up, and those who don't, do nothing. 4. So that's
5, Mr. Mayor.
5. So that means it's a casting vote. And who gets the casting vote?
I suggest you do call for the nays, because you may have an abstention.
Okay. Against, again, use the thumbs up for against. There's a clap, 1, 2, 3. So it's 2 abstentions. There's 2 people who haven't voted. Do they wish to vote? Hey, Angus? 4. There's 1 person that hasn't voted.
Could I suggest that it might be Carolyn, and maybe you might want to call for the nays again?
I did vote.
Or which way?
Finger go up.
I want the rates to be 0, so I didn't vote for 4.88.
Right. So you're voting for that motion to lose. So you're the nay. So it is 5 all in.
Could, Mr. Mayor, just because it's going to get really close, could I just ask to have the againsts again, just to make 100% sure?
Right. Against, put your little thumbs up.
This is against what?
Against the motion.
Against the motion.
4.8% less interest, less district promotion.
Okay, thank you.
So, they're disappearing.
It was 5.
So it's 5 all. So when we have a 5 all, we have a casting vote. Stuart, you're shaking your head.
Did we definitely have 5 all? I thought we only had 4 then.
No, I got 5 that time.
Can we call for an individual vote, aye or no, as we go around?
Okay.
Would that help?
Yeah, we'll do that. And Hamish, could you record, please?
No.
Roger.
Sorry, I've lost my track of thought. What refresh my memory. What am I voting for?
Number 2, 4.8% rate rise, less the interest, less the district promotion.
Aye.
Neil is nay. John, you need to turn your microphone on, John. We can't hear you. Can everyone turn the microphones on, man? Be ready. Go back to John. Angus?
Against the motion.
Against. Lane?
In favour of the motion.
Lynette?
In favour of the motion.
In favour. John?
Against.
Against. Stuart?
In favour.
In favour. Liz?
Against.
Against. Diane?
In favour.
Carolyn?
Against.
Add that add up, Hamish.
5-5, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, we got it right then.
That's great. So in a casting vote, the chairman gets to have the casting vote. Is that correct, Hamish?
Correct.
I believe so, but should we just get clarification from Philippa under our standing orders, please?
Okay, Philippa, if you could come in, please.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. And there's just to be aware that you don't have to vote for the status quo. That's a myth. It's not a fact. So your casting vote can be for or against the motion, and it can be the opposite way to you voted initially if you choose to.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And the casting vote will stick with my original vote, which was against. So the motion is lost. So we need to have another motion, go back to the options. And does someone else want to bring a motion to us out of the options that we have, or something different? Angus? Liz?
Sorry, I'm slow on the unmute. I'm thinking about a recommendation of a rate rise of no more than 2.5%. Which would be worked out, as I think someone said before, by our CE to how that's going to work. But in that, I'd like to include the interest and the EMC. I just think we could go a little bit better than that.
Okay, taking the interest in the EMC into account, and you're looking at did you say 2.5%?
Yeah, 2.5%.
The go for rate was 2.5. Liz has got a motion there. Is there a seconder?
I will second that.
Seconder, John. Open discussion. Carolyn, you did have your hand up. Did you want to speak?
I was going to propose an alternative motion, but that's already done now. I think we need to keep our rates between 0 and 1, and we need to understand that our community and the ratepayers are under duress and suffering, and that may be prolonged, and we should do our best endeavours to support our community.
Thank you. Angus? Yep. You were on. Angus, we can't hear you.
I'm not actually going to say anything at the moment, apart from I've just given I'll move a notice of motion that I'll be moving for 0% if this fails.
Right, thank you. Roger?
Yeah, could I ask Councillor McMillan, why 2.5? How does she come to that figure?
Good question. I don't know. I just think 2% less than or 2.5% less than what we still need to have a small increase, but it doesn't need to be the 4.88. And I was sort of thinking a lot of our increases go by the inflation rate of whatever 2.6%. So I thought around about that.
With respect, I think you're making your decisions on emotion and not reason.
It's okay. Diane?
Well, we lost the other motion, which I supported, so I believe we have to look forward, and I do therefore support what Councillor McMillan is proposing, because I still think we do need some form of a rate take.
A rate increase, you mean? Yep. John?
I certainly support Liz's recommendation, because what it gives the CEO an ability to make some adjustments to wages that need to be made, particularly for those who are lower paid. And also, if we can do it, it also gives us the ability to appoint a GIS officer, which someone said before was required. So I support it, and certainly I think we can do that within the 2.5%.
Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To get going, I will support this one as well. For the 50 cents, I don't want to spend much more time.
Good.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I too will support this motion, but I'm an advocate for the GIS person. I think for the future operation of the council, I highly recommend that be part of the deal.
I think you're handing over the ability for where those rate reductions savings will, you're giving that to the CE to work through as per the discussion earlier. Angus?
Mr. Mayor, I just think that we should be resolute and show some leadership, and if we go for a zero and borrow, we actually won't be borrowing that much. Interest rates are real low at the moment, and the level of service will stay the same. So the people of Ashburton can rest easy that they're getting a better deal than what they would have otherwise have got.
Stuart, your hand go up again, or was it not taken down from last time? Right. That's right. And I won't be supporting the motion. I'm looking more for lower than the 2.5%, but ready to put the motion shortly after Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to say I'll support Liz's motion and let the CE find the rest of the cuts just to get it through.
So just to be sure, Liz, you've got the right of reply. Did you want to restate the motion as well?
Okay. So yeah, I might need help on this. Sorry, brains.
Philippa,
2.5% or up to a 2.5% rate increase for the next financial year, which and savings made by the interest, the $400,000 of interest and the EMC savings, and the remainder to be decided by the CE.
Paul, have you got a clarification there?
Just going to clarify the up to in that resolution. Is it a 2.5?
Yeah, 2.5.
Thank you.
2.5. So the right of reply has been had. I'll put the motion. Do we want to go through one by one, or do we just want to try the raise of hands first? Try the raise of hands first. Get your little things up, and Hamish is keeping an eye on them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that's 7. 7 and against. I'll wait for those to disappear. And against 1, 2, 3. 7, 3. That adds up. So that motion is passed. Thank you, councillors. Good debate, and we got there at the end, and gives the staff good direction going forward. The next item of business.
Mr. Mayor, wish to be recorded against that motion, please.
Okay.
And me as well, please, Mr. Mayor. I want to be recorded against the motion.
Okay, and may as well put myself there too. 3 recorded against. Next item of business is the number 15, 2019-20 rates instalment for penalty. And what page is there? Must be about 99, is it, or something like that?
99, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Here we are. Got to it. And Paul, this is your report here. Anything further to add?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, it's a long report that actually doesn't change a lot. It amends our remission policy. That at the moment our remission policy says that you can't have a second penalty write-off if you've had one within 24 months. It's removing that so that you can have a second one. It's just relating to this instalment, and that we will accept a telephone application because the original remission policy said that it had to be written, but we may have some people who can't use electronic means or get anything to the post or whatever, so we'll do it by telephone as well. I do realise that this is not as far as council wanted to go, that I think there are lots of other ideas bandied around, in particular removing or reducing the penalty completely, but unfortunately the legislation doesn't allow that. So what we've really got here is simply our existing remission policy opened up a bit more to allow for anybody who meets the criteria in that policy, including financial hardship, to get the penalty removed. And if they enter into a repayment plan for that instalment, then the penalty will be removed.
Thanks, Paul. Go to questions and make sure the questions coming of Paul or the staff. Carolyn?
Thank you. I didn't realise I'd actually pushed the button. But my question is, I just want some assurances, Paul, I don't know if you're the right person to give them to me, that to get this, the penalty to be waived or reduced or whatever is not going to be too arduous for people and it's going to be manageable for everybody.
Seems to me, I think it's manageable on our side. We do have staff resources that can help with this. Of course, it depends on how long, if the lockdown gets extended, but we do have resources to deal with this. And it does still, I suppose, target those people who can afford to pay their rates, should still pay their rates, and those who can't need to get in contact with us.
So thank you for that, and I'm pleased it doesn't cause too much hassle on your side, but the other side, for people, the ratepayer to come in, that's manageable for them. They'll ring up, somebody will answer the phone. If they don't have access to a computer, somebody will help them through it. And
That's
it's not going to be too lengthy a process.
That's correct. We'll put extra resources on if needed to cope with that.
Angus?
I was going to ask the Chief Executive to explain, as I suggested the other day, but I think Paul has got it. Am I correct, Mr. Chief Executive? And if that's the case, I'll move the recommendation.
Could I just ask for the question?
The other day, I asked you if you could make it plain what the remission would be and what people do. I think Paul has explained it to save me asking you that question. So I'll move the recommendation on page 99.
Wait till we go through questions first, and I'll come back to you for the moving the recommendation after we had questions, Angus. That's all right. Next up is Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Paul, I think it stands in the recommendations. It's basically only for this the fourth instalment of this financial year. Is that correct?
True, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. It's only for the fourth instalment. Any steps or mitigation we put into the next year's rates will be dealt with when we prepare the rating resolution. We will look at issues regarding the new year's rates then.
Thank you for that, and I will second it.
I haven't got a motion yet. We're still on questions. Carolyn?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. One question for you, Paul. Next year, because this is set, this penalty of 10%, we cannot alter that this year. Next year, can we have a range, or do we have to set a hard penalty, or can we say, the penalties can be between 0 and 5 or 0 and 10, or do we have to actually pick a number?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we would need to pick a number, but we can pick a number different for each instalment. So my understanding is you could, for example, in instalment 1, if we're still in a difficult situation, you could have say a 3% penalty on instalment 1 and shift it to a 5 or 10 in instalment 2. So you can set them at different rates for each instalment. So I'm unaware that any council has ever done it, but we could be the first.
Rachel, you got a comment there? Your hand went up.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out that if you do choose to set different penalty percentage rates at this, you do need to do that at the start of the year when you do your resolution.
Thank you for that. Stuart?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. You were talking about in this motion, instalment 4. That's not till July. People are getting their rates now. That's instalment 3, isn't it? So I thought we could include instalment 3 and 4.
We've done number 3. Hamish, go.
Oh, yeah, the one they're getting now is 4. The one that'll be due in May is instalment 4.
Yeah.
3's
last year we went back to just 4 instalments. We used to have 6. So we went back to 4. So the one in July will probably be August. It'll be the first one of the new year, new financial year. Diane, and then we're going to Angus.
Yeah, originally my question was answered around the instalment 4, but I think going forward, instalments 1 and 2 in particular will be hard for people too, with us not knowing where the economic climate's going to go. So at what point do we put something like this in place for, say, instalment 1 and 2 going forward in the new year?
Through Mr. Mayor, the remission policy, you may want to amend that, because this remission policy change only deals with this instalment. But Rachel was right that we will be dealing with this issue again as part of setting the rates for the new year. And we will talk about options then, because the situation, we'll be doing that in June, and the situation may be a lot clearer.
Thank you.
Just a comment on the people are going to have it hard. The previous recommendation would have addressed that, not this one. But Angus?
Mr. Mayor, I move the recommendation as there. This means that people will still pay their rates, but if there is hardship or financial hardship or some other matter, they can come along individually and talk to the council, put their case, and similar to what they do with a bank manager. So this does not mean that people will not pay rates. It just means that sometimes they may pay them weekly, or they may pay them as per circumstances, or they may go through that other scheme where they can be added onto the mortgage. But that's a discussion that should have, in my opinion, between the individual ratepayer and a member of staff who knows the ins and outs of our policy. I move the motion.
Okay. Lane?
And
You seconded it, I think. You come through as second. Yeah. We take that as second. You have trouble with coming through. Second it. Carolyn.
Thank you, Angus and Lane. I just want to stress that I think we need a very compassionate person on the other end of the telephone when we are looking at these rates rebates. And I don't think people should be jumping through hurdles to prove that they cannot pay their rates. I think there'll be a lot of people struggling at the moment.
Paul, is there a if ratepayer's not happy with the decision, is there an appeal process?
Through Mr. Mayor, we haven't ever had a ratepayer who's asked to go, who's been desperately unhappy with our decision. But of course, the 1 and 24 month period did stop a lot of people constantly applying for a penalty remission.
Any further discussion, further debate? Angus, you need to write a reply? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, raise your hand. Passed. 100%, I think. Yep. Liz?
Tony's just reminded us that we need to uplift the annual plan consultation recommendation next as well.
Thank you. Great. That was your comment too. And that was on page, what can we go back to, because we'll do that next. And that is on page what?
Page 61.
61.
Previous report.
I move that council uplifts, that council approves changes to the draft 2020-21 budget identified as a result of this report. I move that be uplifted from the table.
Thank you, Angus, and moved, seconded Liz. All in favour, raise your hand. Yep, it's now uplifted, and back to the original recommendation is that council approves changes to the, no, the wrong one, 61, that's not the right one.
Yeah, rate increase.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one.
It is the one.
So could we ask for Tony's input?
Consultation, wasn't it? Tony, could you come in and see what we need to, what we put on the table, or even Philippa?
Hi,
Hi, so through the chair, this is going back to the audit risk and finance minutes. And in there was a report that went to the committee about not consulting on the annual plan, and that was deferred until you'd made the decision around the rate increase for 2021. So we just need to go back to make that decision, so it's all I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, please.
Right, have we got a page number for that?
I'm just getting there.
Right.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I think we did item number 14.
Yep.
So you got your hand up. Is it a comment or is still up from before?
The one on page 43.
Correct. Page 43, dead right.
Right, number 18, consultation on the annual plan 2021, recommendation to council that council decide not to consult on the annual plan 2021 in accordance with section 95(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2002. So I'd like to move or ask questions first. Any questions? Oh, Diane, you've got your hand up. Turn yourself on, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I was going to move it if there were no questions.
Yep, you'll take the mover. Yep, you moved. Carolyn, you got your hand up.
I'm trying to make myself visible. I seem to have gone offline.
We can see you've got a question or not? Does someone else like to second it?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Roger, thank you. Any further debate? Any debate? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against, carried. Thank you. So there'll be no consultation on annual plan. Great. So we're back up to page item number 16, page 105. I think we're there, aren't we, Philippa? We haven't missed anything. Reserve and Hall Boards report. Carolyn, get your hand up.
I was just going to recommend that we receive the report and we approve the appointment submitted by the board.
Okay, a seconder for that. Angus. Angus seconded it. Any further discussion? Lynette?
Just going to ask, is there a plan going forward for these boards that haven't met and had their triennial meetings? Or what's going to happen with them? Or are we going to amalgamate them into the neighbouring ones?
Who's here can answer that? Whose area is that one? Hamish, do you?
We can do some further work on that because I don't think there's a simple answer. It's not as simple as saying you can just merge them because someone didn't have an annual meeting. And I think we looked at this previously, didn't we, around some of those reserve boards, and it's not just a straightforward matter because they didn't meet. So why don't, through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps we can prepare a report for a future meeting in relation to those that haven't met at the time of that meeting for a further discussion about how council would like to proceed in those cases.
Okay, thanks for that. We'll do that. Get a report. Angus. We can't hear you, Angus. You need to. No. Should we go to Liz while you're. There you go.
The report. No problem.
Okay. Liz.
Just a question on why no one turned up to the Ruapuna Reserve. Councillor Lethem might be able to answer. Or did people turn up and no one wanted to be on that board?
Yeah, we did have the present chairman and secretary and that there, but no one else turned up, and none of them wanted to carry on in the position that they held. They'd held that position for a number of years, and I think particularly with the swimming pool there, some of the government regulations about who should be on duty at swimming pools and things has made it very, very difficult, in fact almost impossible, for little rural areas to have someone there when the children want to have a swim. I'm not intimately familiar with the details, but it appears to be quite a major challenge.
Sure.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think before we come down with a heavy hand, if the staff liaise with the councillor who is appointed to the board, because some of the rural ones have been busy and there's seasonal things that they said they'll just leave it till we get into the autumn a little bit. Now, of course, we're going to miss sort of March and April, so a lot of those meetings possibly would have been held then. So just tally ho a bit until this restriction goes off, I think.
Yeah.
Good. So the recommendation there, it's been moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please raise your hand. It's carried. Thank you. And the next item is the Mayor's report. I'll move that we receive the Mayor's report of the seconder. Councillor McMillan. All in favour, raise your hand. Done. Thank you. And there's one thing out there I'd just like to mention. I did get a petition, or there's two actually items. The petition came in, item number 6. Holly Isler brought a petition in to for the installation of a hydroslide EA networks, and she had about 30 or 40 signatures on that report. So I'd like to move that forward into the consideration and the long-term plan for next year to put her petition into that long-term plan and address the matter there. All in agreement with that would be okay. We won't do a motion, but Stuart?
No, I'm not in favour. We've looked at that hydroslide and the council has said no. So I think if it had been 500 or 1,000, I would agree. But with 30 and the council has made that decision not to, I don't think we should go and look at it. Just because any minor, are we going to take notice of every minor petition? We'll be wasting our time.
Those are the people of our district who bring these things to us. So because we haven't got 100% to take that through the long-term plan, I might ask for the staff to bring that petition through a report and handle it that way. At the next appropriate committee, we'll take it there and get direction from there, because we're not getting 100% support there. And the other recommendation there is that Councillor Rawlinson replaces Councillor Cameron on the Ashburton Youth Council. Does Councillor Lovett?
Actually like to support that motion.
You're moving it? Are you moving it?
I'll move it.
Yeah, second it. Liz? Any further debate, discussion? I'll put the motion. All in favour, raise your hand. Carried. Great. Anything out of the Mayor's report you want to ask questions on? The meetings after the 26th of March, I think, have all been via, up until the close off of that report, have all been via this machine in the room. Nothing there. So for the Mayor's report, we'd go on to the end of the open part of the meeting, and just like to thank you all for your involvement, commitment today to the meeting. And just coming up to Easter, and Easter's not going to be like Easter was in the last years. Easter, Good Friday is just going to be another day, and Easter Sunday is just another day. But I have on good authority the Easter Bunny is an essential service, so he will be around at certain places, and he'll still be there. I've also had it on good authority that I've heard that some people might be wanting to slip away to their seaside resorts or their mountain resorts for which is Hakatree, Rakaia, or Rangitata, and then the mountain resorts is Lake Camp for the weekend. If that does happen, I've had on good authority, the police are watching, and if you do go away and you get there, you may be trapped there for another 2 weeks, as they will know who is there. You may not be let back out. So I would treat it with caution on your decisions around that. You are supposed to stay home in your bubble, so just stay there, and we'll get over this virus as quickly as we can. There's only 2 more weeks to go, so we're over halfway, which is good. So I'll declare the open part of the meeting closed and move into committee. And there's only reason we need to into committee now is to Ruben, you're taking us off.